Number 1. This story is about a weird encounter that happened to me a few years ago. Just for some background, I am a small female in her 20s. I have always been a little paranoid when it comes to strangers, so a lot of the time I freak out over nothing. This was not one of those times. So a few years ago, I was getting ready for a small get-together I was having at my house. It was the night before the party, and I realized that I need to pick up some chips and dip. I decided that I had too much to do the next day, so I would go to the local Safeway that night. To understand this story, you have to understand the layout of the shopping center that this Safeway was in. There were many stores in it, with Safeway being to the left. There was a large parking area in front of Safeway where customers would park, get their shopping carts. There were other areas of this parking lot, but no one who shopped at the Safeway parked in those areas. So back to the story, it was around 8:30 at night when I arrived at the Safeway. It's surprisingly crowded for that time of night, so I have to park towards the back of the Safeway parking lot. I finished shopping and started to walk out with my chips and a few other items in my shopping cart. As I'm walking to my car, I notice that a small woman is walking with a shopping cart towards my direction. That would not be weird itself, but she was walking from a desolate area of the parking lot that was never used for Safeway. It was like she was coming from the middle of nowhere. I told myself that I was just being paranoid and kept walking. I glanced over at the woman again, and she started to speed up. She was walking at a brisk pace and seemed to be walking directly towards me. My heart started to race, and I began to walk a little faster. A part of me was still thinking that I was just being paranoid, but she seemed so determined. I had arrived at my car and started to load the trunk when I saw that the woman was running towards me. I'm not exaggerating. She was sprinting directly at me. I went into survival mode and slammed my car door and quickly got inside. She arrived at my car just as I locked the doors. She started to yell at me in another language and shoved the shopping cart against my car. For a second, I thought that maybe she had an explanation for what had just happened, and I just freaked out for no reason. But just then, a large white van pulled out of nowhere, and she jumped into the side of the van. She hopped in the van and sped off in a different direction, leaving the shopping cart against my car. I don't know if she was planning on robbing me or worse. All I know is that my sense of paranoia saved me from something very dark that day. Number 2. This happened in 1979 when I was a 17-year-old girl. I was in London for summer school and stayed with a family friend, Jane, in her apartment. One night, I went to a party and ended up staying really late. Being a poor student, I decided to bus home and got off at the closest bus stop to the apartment, which was still a good 20 to 30-minute walk. By then, it was after midnight and the streets were completely empty. I walked down the street hearing nothing but the sound of my shoes clapping against the pavement. I noticed this guy come out of one of the houses up the street. He was walking towards me on the same side of the road. We passed by each other without incident. I continued walking down the dimly lit streets, turning my head to see behind me at one point and saw the same guy, only now he was walking behind me, keeping his distance. Not wanting to assume he was following me or show any fear, I looked straight ahead and increased my walking speed a bit. After 10 long minutes of walking down several deserted blocks, I finally turned the dark corner into my street. There were still about 5 minutes left till I got home. I stole one more glance behind me. There he was, still keeping his distance. In that moment, it became quite clear that he was following me. A sense of dread spread through me on the dark, lonely street as I tried to remain calm and just get home as soon as possible. The apartment was part of a complex and the front door was located at the back, so you had to go around to get to it. This meant that if I was fast enough, there was a good chance he wouldn't see which apartment was mine. I walked as fast as I could without running and finally reached the front door. No sight of him. Good. With the key in my badly shaking hand, I fumbled at the doorknob, terrified, praying to get it open before he finds me and I'm never seen or heard from again. My prayers were answered, and I managed to unlock it finally. I hurried inside and locked the door. Safe and able to breathe again, I went upstairs to my bedroom. Then I made a mistake. My bedroom faced the street, and when I entered, I turned on the light. The curtains weren't drawn, and I saw him standing there looking straight up at me. Next thing you know, he is ringing the doorbell. Panicking, I ran downstairs into Jane's room, who was woken up by the doorbell, explained the situation to her, and asked her not to open the door. She said she had to because she didn't want him to wake the neighbors. I watched her go, staying in her bedroom. He asked,
"Is Mary there?"
He must have decided to pretend to ask for someone when he realized I wasn't there alone. She responded,
"There's no one here called Mary."
He apologized and then left. I breathed a sigh of relief and watched him through the window as he left. As he was walking, he turned around, and I had the unfortunate opportunity to meet his eyes once more. He scowled at me through the glass. I shuddered. The next day, Jane told me about all the dodgy things and crimes that happened in that area. Turns out, it wasn't a particularly safe area. After that, I only ever went out during the day. I thankfully never saw that guy again, but sometimes I wonder what could have happened if Jane wasn't there that night. Number 3. So this happened when I was probably around 5. I'm 24 now. I used to go and visit my Aunt Carol up in New York for around 1 to 2 weeks every summer for about 6 years. My family is from North Carolina, but my aunt had moved to New York for her husband's job a few years prior to me coming to visit. Anyways, I loved going to her house. She lived in the country and had a beautiful house with a lot of land and a big creek behind it. My cousins, who visited sometimes at the same time as well, would all go swimming and searching for fossils down in the creek. Well, my aunt also loved yard sales, and we would go every Saturday and Sunday morning to bargain hunt. Now, while my aunt and uncle had a lot of money, they were very cheap, never went to big-name grocery stores or bought anything new. Maybe that's why they had so much money. Well, the one week I went to visit, my cousin Erica was there as well. Erica was a few years older than me, making her about 10 or 11 at the time. It was a Saturday morning, and Erica, my aunt, and I had just finished all of our running around looking at yard sales. Well, we decided to stop at a dollar store on the way home so my aunt could grab a couple of things for dinner that night. I didn't want to go in because I was exhausted from being up so early that morning, so my aunt made Erica stay in the car with me so she could run inside really quick. Well, it was hot, so my aunt left the windows down while she ran into the store. It was pretty normal, and I was starting to fall asleep. That's when a big old-looking pickup pulled up beside the car to park. I heard a dog barking and immediately sat up. In the back were 2 huge German shepherds going nuts. I'm talking growling and barking, but they were in a kennel. Now, just know, German shepherds have always been my favorite breed of dog ever since I was little. In fact, I currently have 3 now. They are my pride and joy. Well, I was fascinated and started crawling over my cousin to get a closer look at the dogs and was talking loudly about how beautiful they were. As I'm talking and being crazy, this older-looking man gets out of his pickup. I don't remember everything about him, just that he had a long black ponytail, jeans, and a jean button-up on. He sees me smile and just politely asks if I would like to pet them. Now remember, I said these dogs were going nuts, but me never having seen this breed so close said yes. My cousin is telling me no and telling him we have to wait for our aunt, who's in the store. He looks around and tells my cousin it'll only take a second. Well, I unlock the car, jump out, and run to the other side to see the dogs. My cousin wastes no time locking the car back up and calling for me to come back in. I ignored her and started trying to climb in the back of the truck. Well, the man picked me up and held me while the dogs continued to bark and growl. I was smart enough not to pet them, but did admire them. He then starts asking me questions, where I was from and what I was doing that day. He told me how pretty I was and how much he liked my accent. I had a strong southern accent when I was little, and when I was up north, people always used to comment on it. I do vaguely remember him looking around a lot, but being so young, didn't think it was weird. He then asked if I wanted to see the pictures of the puppies his dogs had just had, but they were in his truck. Of course I wanted to see the puppies. I could barely contain how excited I was. So he carried me to the passenger side, and right as he was about to open the door, I hear a woman scream my name. "Casey!" I look around, and it's my aunt running out of the store. She had dropped her bags and was literally sprinting towards me and this man. He immediately put me down, went to the driver's side of the truck, got in, and drove off. I, of course, started crying because I was confused by what was going on. My aunt got to me, and I've never seen anyone so mad and scared at the same time. She was crying and yelling and asking my cousin why she let me get out of the car. I told my aunt it wasn't her fault. I just wanted to see the dogs. After my aunt calmed down, we drove home, and she called my mother to let her know what happened. Not sure what they said to each other, but I still was allowed to go visit every summer, but never allowed to be by myself again. Now I know that the man I met could have been a good guy that had no bad intentions, but I also know he sped off when my aunt came running out of the store like he was nervous. So either way, strange New York man at the dollar store, let's not meet.